Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Claire Fincham. I'm the marketing manager of SAPICS. It's an honor to welcome you here today to join us on a webinar. SAPICS has corporate members and corporate membership packages, and Cornerstone Institute is one of our corporate members, and we have a great relationship with them. And as one of the membership benefits of being a corporate member is the opportunity to host a webinar or have a site visit, and hence the webinar we're having today. I've known Sharon for quite a while when she was at CCI, where Shanti is. Thanks, Shanti, for joining us. And we proposed this webinar this afternoon. So I'm going to hand over to her in a minute. But before I do, I just want to use this opportunity to say to anybody on the call who are not SAPICS members to consider joining the association industry body for supply chain and operations management. We have just under 1,000 members, and we have quite a lot going on. We have events such as this and live events, breakfast, site visits. There are membership benefits. There is a phenomenal education program. We have a very strong youth component to our membership, and we support various universities with soft skills, etc. And we have an annual conference. And I will, in the chat, put a link, because where we are at in the annual conference program is that we have got a call for speakers out. So anybody who's interested in sharing their stories, their war stories, their case studies, the SAPICS community would love to hear from you. The event is in June in Cape Town at the Century City Convention Centre. So I will also put my email address into the chat. So if you have any questions about SAPICS or what we get up to, or if you would like to participate as a member, or if you already are a member, there is also opportunities to volunteer in the membership committee, volunteers committee. We have very lively, interesting conversations. And also, if you are interested in mentoring our young professionals and students, there's an opportunity to do that. So I'm happy to share any information with you in that regard. And I'm going to hand over now to Sharon, who will introduce the speakers. And I thank you again all for answering. Oh, I just wanted to say housekeeping. If you could just keep yourselves on mute, unless you have a really burning issue, to just interrupt Warren and Linda to chat about. You're welcome to do that. But otherwise, we will keep all the questions and discussion points to the end if that suits you. And the team at Beier have graciously agreed to share the slides after the event. So don't panic about taking screenshots or making notes, because you will receive those all in a few days. So thank you to them. Thank you, Sharon. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Claire. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. My name, as you see, is Sharon Brunt, and I'm the Deputy Dean for Business Studies at the Cornerstone Institute. So here at the Department of Business Studies, we are really honored to co-host this event in partnership with SAPICS. And as a department, we are committed to equipping individuals with the knowledge and skills to become leaders. And this collaboration with SAPICS and the Beier Group and us really reflects our shared mission to foster innovation, professional growth, and ethical practices in supply chain management. So today's webinar is really an opportunity to explore real-world solutions to improve inventory management, to engage with our industry leaders, and to contribute to discussions that can shape the future of supply chains. So before I hand over to the speakers, let me introduce them. So first of all, we have Warren Sachs. He is the CEO for the Beier Group, which is comprised of 4 manufacturing operations, and they employ approximately 2,000 people in Durban, PE, and Johannesburg. Warren is an experienced manufacturing executive who has worked for more than 25 years across automotive, technical textile, medical device manufacturing sectors. He has managed numerous projects both locally and internationally, including the development and growth of several small and medium-sized manufacturers in South Africa, and the establishment of international export markets for the Beier Group's products. Warren is a professionally registered engineering graduate with an MBA cum laude from Gibbs, and his research thesis focused on his passion for digital transformation in the SME manufacturing sector in South Africa. And also Warren serves on several company boards. And our second speaker is Lindo Nuklopo. He's an engineering graduate as well, who has also completed his MBA at Gibbs. His research focused on exploring the challenges senior managers face in advancing digital transformation within South Africa's FMCG industry. With over a decade of experience in manufacturing across the FMCG and technical textile sectors, Lindo is currently the Group Procurement Manager at BBF Safety Group, which is a company within the Beier Group. Lindo's engineering background, combined with expertise in procurement, operations, maintenance, and technical services, really equips him with a strong skill set for driving strategic sourcing, optimizing supply chain management, and managing direct cost of sales. So a big thank you to Warren and Lindo for giving up your time. I really look forward to this interesting session. So please go ahead. Thank you.
Sharon, thank you very much. And as we said, I really hate introductions and the likes, but the bottom line is we would like to today really just talk through who the group is, please. And I don't mean to make this sound like a marketing spiel. I would like to give you context about what the Beier Group is, what we stand for, and how we've been able to solve some of the challenges. What I'm going to do is it's a two-stage presentation. So I'll introduce it first from a Beier Group level, so that you understand the interrelation between the four value chains, or the four, it's in fact 6 value chains. And then introduce the problem. Obviously, COVID, flooding, and looting was a big issue in our lives. So I'm going to introduce that. Then we'll drill down, and you'll see it'll change from the green. This is our Beier green. So this color is a particular Pantone, that's the Beier green. And what we'll do is into the session, and I'm hoping that the screen is changing. I'm sorry, it's a little bit behind. We'll drill down from the Beier Group level down to the BBF Safety Group level. And that's where Lindo comes in. Lindo actually joined the group at a group level and was then deployed to go and sort out what's happening with some of the supply chain problems in one of the operating companies within the group. So without further ado, let me just introduce you to the Beier Group. First of all, our vision. What are we about? All of our products help protect and improve the quality of life. As mentioned, we employ about 2,000 employees. And within our ecosystem, and please, this is really a critical one for us. There are 10,000 lives in the ecosystem, and by ecosystem, we include the SMMEs. One of my personal passions is to do with manufacturing. We serve on multiple boards. We're involved with multiple networks that involve manufacturers, and in particular SMMEs. And I'll tie the loop back. I'm going to start with how it started with wool, and I'm going to tie it back later with how SMMEs in the woolen sector have helped shorten the supply chains and help solve some of the problems that I think we've all experienced in the last few years. The other thing that's key is at the bottom there, what we call RTD, is that Beier Group is passionate about industrialization. We firmly believe we deindustrialized as a country too early. Transformation has got 2 roles, both transformation of raw material inputs into finished goods, but also transformation of the economy, transformation of the societies we live in, and then development. And one of the things we've done, which has been both a blessing and a curse, is we focus heavily on development. And we would far rather grow people through the organization, through a development agenda, than necessarily employ people with the skills right at the start. But I'll talk about that a little bit later on. We're going to try to finish by Q2 so that there's time for questions. The story started in 1929, and it's quite a familiar story where nationalism was spreading through Germany. Hitler had just failed in what they called the Beer Hall Putsch, when OTH Beier came to Durban from Germany. He knew how to trade in wool. And that you see there is a picture, not from 1929, but it's to do with sorting wool in the harbor that was down in Maiden Wharf. And Durban was obviously a seaport. And we, in fact, had some of the best quality wool in the world and still do. We used to be a big exporter of wool. Now we tend to be an importer by and large of wool. And there are some men sorting. So that's how the story started in 1929. And I'll close the loop for you shortly. Within the Beier Group, there are 4 companies. So obviously, 95 years later, we now have 4 divisions that have changed significantly. On the left, we've got Beier Envirotech that manufactures filtration. And you would know that by and large, Eskom is probably their biggest customer. And we supply filtration media to the power stations. Kusile, Medupi, Duva, Indrina, Arnott, and the likes. We really are one of only a few local producers of filter bags from start to finish, from fiber to finished bags. Then we have BBF Safety Group that we'll talk about today that manufacture what you see there is a military boot, but safety shoes, Bova, Lemaitre, Frams are some of the brands. Beier Drawtex is a medical device manufacturer. Here in Pinetown, we have a clean room and we manufacture chronic wound dressings. And then New Coat is a PVC manufacturer. So what you see there is a tarpaulin, typical tarpaulin that might go into either a tarpaulin cover, a tent, a taut liner for the side of trucks, load space covers. And the key here is that the 2,000 people that I was talking about earlier are involved in the conversion process here in these companies here in South Africa. A lot of the raw materials do get imported. So a lot of the challenges we have are long lead times of bringing raw materials in, or a shortage of raw materials. There's a particular fiber that goes into the medical dressing that can only be purchased from Europe. PVC, there is a local supplier, but the volume is not enough. So there's a lot of imported components. So we face similar challenges to almost anybody who imports. Going into the details, these are some of the products. I'm a visual person. I always prefer to see a product. So that there is a filter bag that goes into Eskom. New Coat, that's a range of PVC that could go into car seats, the back of car seats, taxi flooring. This here, that's a safety shoe. All of you would know that. We do men's and women's safety shoes. We also do garments. And that's our medical device at the top there, Drawtex. It's a chronic wound dressing. You can see a patient being treated there. Just to give you some context of the products. And the nature of it is that there's a lot of intercompany play of products that, for example, Envirotech that makes the filter bag, you can see they take fiber and convert it to a filter bag, also make the insole or the top sock that goes into a safety shoe. In particular, head to toe PPE, you can see a safety shoe there. And the reason I'm showing you this picture is that local manufacturers have to differentiate, because you can buy a shoe from China. If you buy a large volume, you can buy it cheap, but not quick, and not custom made. And what we've done is we've used a local podiatrist to design shoes for a South African foot. So one of the ways we've differentiated ourselves is by being able to make fit for purpose PPE. The other thing is we have to remain globally competitive. And so a lot of our challenge, and one of Lindo's big challenges, is to ensure that the incoming goods are right price, that we can compete with the finished goods. We spoke a bit about lean earlier. One of my key focuses is that whatever we do, we convert raw materials to finished goods without adding any cost, which doesn't add value to a customer. Elimination of waste and elimination of variability is one of the key kind of goals within the broader Beier Group. Just to show you, these are tangible, touchable assets. Those are machines that are here in Pinetown, South Africa, not Pinetown, Shanghai. And Linda has a responsibility in the footwear division of supplying the raw materials into that. Just a very quick overview. These are the 4 divisions. And then we have external suppliers. What I'm trying to illustrate here is that Mossop Leather, we have a minority shareholding stake in, but they are based in Wellington in the Western Cape. And they supply some of the leather that goes into the footwear at BBF. Some of the leathers, however, are specialists that can't be made locally. They're from hides that are not available locally. And so what Lindo is continuously doing is balancing the local supply of leather with the imported supply. And as you can imagine, there's fit for purpose, and you're continuously judging the specification of a leather against what is fit for purpose, against lead times, supply chains, harbor delays, etc. Add to that the complexity. We've got multiple ERP systems within these groups. So Envirotech on the filtration side runs Infor-LN. BBF runs JD Edwards. Drawtex runs on Sage and Excel. Newcoat is just implemented Acumatica. And we've been through the pain of implementing these systems over the last, I guess, 26 years that I've been here. I think I've been involved in all of these ERP rollouts. And one of the things that has become clear is that there's no, in my view, single solution that works perfectly across the groups. And when you've got an integrated value chain, as we do here, where the 4 companies feed each other, we have a real issue with trying to get data electronically exchanged between the divisions. We still, and I talk here, we still have make to stock in a BBF situation, make to order in BBF and Envirotech, engineer to order in Envirotech. And in fact, what we're finding is that to some extent within the BBF vertical, we now are starting to develop an engineer to order type system. On top of it, we've previously tried twice to implement a system called OneBeat. That's not our product. It's a theory of constraints based dynamic buffer management system. And I will put my hand up and acknowledge that I failed twice in rolling it out. We currently use and I'm talking now specifically at BBF, we now use a version of demand-driven MRP, where we have up to, I think it's 9 models, Lindo, 9 different models that we can use to try and bed down demand. And the reason that I'm talking about this and not Lindo, and I'm quite open about it, is that this has been one of my absolute bugbears. I started in the automotive industry, looking at theory of constraints, eliminating the constraint, the 5 steps of Ellie Goldratt's process. And I was adamant that we could roll OneBeat out, identify the constraint, and put in buffers to alleviate that constraint or elevate that constraint. And I've as yet not been successful. So I would hope that out of the networks today, we could share some knowledge on that at some stage. Equally so, demand-driven MRP, I have an absolute passion that you cannot get 100% accurate demand. And the more time you spend and the more money you spend on trying to get a more accurate demand or forecast, you get this diminishing returns. You start to realize diminishing returns. And I'm adamant that before I retire one day, I will see a blend of this rolled out in these factories. The problem, just to put it very quickly into context, we are that tiny little star there in the bottom eastern coast of South Africa. We do have a plant in Gqeberha, and we've got a plant up in Johannesburg. But the one thing that we realized is that when COVID hit in 2020, when looting happened in KZN in 2021, and when the floods hit KZN in 2022, nobody cares. We are insignificant as an economy. We are tiny relative to the rest of the world. And in terms of the supply chains and the shipping lines, and I've got a slide on it, which I used with the trade unions when we were talking in 2020, really, we're pretty much on our own. And that's one of the reasons that we love to engage in meetings like this, is that it's up to us as South Africans and the South African economy, and I believe the manufacturers, retailers, wholesalers, is it's up to us to change the narrative and to solve our own problems and find solutions to these challenges. We don't need to go through the inflation pressures that we had. Triple PFA had a direct impact on us because it was on again, off again. Was localization a requirement or wasn't it? And as a manufacturer, as the legislation changed and was appealed, our demand was completely unmanageable. One day it's on, one day it's off. I think all of you know the types of supply chains and the challenges that you have, and all of those vessels in red were late. And I don't want to belabor the point too much, but let me give you a particular example. We manufacture a Nikki range of masks. So Lindo is responsible at BBF, and one of the brands that BBF own is Nikki. And you all know what a mask is, an FFP2 mask. Let me show you what we faced in 2020. So in January, an N95 mask was about $7.91, and a normal mask was insignificant. Call it, I think it was R1.80. What that red line is showing you is the cost of the input cost of the melt blown, which is one of the middle components of a mask. And it went on the right-hand axis of let's say around a benchmark of 5 up to a benchmark of around 12. The prices went from 791 for an N95 to 36 Rand in 1 month. The price then, the input price dropped from 36.50, from 12 Rand 50 or 12.5 to approximately 7. It is impossible for any ERP system to manage this type of variability on the input side. At the same time, we were seeing finished masks coming in from China competing with us. And to be honest with you, by the end of the year, things had normalized. We'd expected them to normalize, but they'd normalized at below the level at which they'd initially started. And that's a normal supply and demand issue. It was a hell of a challenge for us. At the same time, we had the lockdown and we had people at home. I'm not going to talk about the solutions. I'm going to let Lindo talk to some of that, but that just gives you an idea. And I'm sure most of you faced similar challenges. One of our solutions, and I wanted to raise this, and please, this comes from a slide that we use with some of our SAEs, but we have helped as a group to develop over 10 small and medium enterprises. And just my key on this slide is to say the one thing that really saved us when we were going through this sort of turmoil, okay, where prices and lead times and availability was up and down, was that we were able to rely on our SMMEs to a large extent, both from the footwear and from the supply, for example, of some of the components that would go into the PPE and masks. And those long supply chains where containers were sitting in the USA, no one could get containers, Shanghai shut down, then they were open, one half of the port was open, one half of the city. We all faced the same problems. This is when the reshoring made so much sense. And thank goodness we'd done this early, because we were able to then turn to these local suppliers and up the demand on them. Fortunately, a lot of them had capacity anyway, because they were fairly flexible, because a lot of the capacity was variable capacity, not fixed. The other thing, and to give you an example, is that we'd localized the wool. If you buy a Bova safety shoe, the top sock that's inside there is a brownie color. And that's because of a brown wool that we used to source from New Zealand. What we then did is, together with Dr. Voya Mashlati, who was the Land Reform Commissioner, we localized in the Eastern Cape the sourcing of brown wool. There were a lot of rural farmers who reared sheep that had this brown wool. And we localized it, fortunately, just before COVID hit. And what it meant was that we were able to keep those value chains alive and supplied, despite the fact that there was COVID that shut the economy down. On top of that, we were able to remain competitive price-wise when the dollar was running, etc. And so from a global perspective, that's why Beier remains committed to this localization and the use of SMMEs where we can. It just keeps reiterating, or it keeps showing itself up as offsetting the risks of lengthening supply chains. So really, I think that's it from my side. And if that gives you an overview at a board level of what we're looking at, I'm going to hand over to BBF, to Lindo. He'll then take you through a more detailed, granular approach to what we did specifically within BBF. And I'm happy to answer any questions at the end of this.
Yeah, thank you, Warren. I think that really paints a context into some of the challenges that we faced, not only as a company, but as a country, following the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to briefly take you through some of the interventions that we've put in place to mitigate some of the shocks and challenges that we're facing as a company. Because as you can imagine, during COVID, demand was unpredictable, supply chains were extended, lead times were extended, and there was a lot of uncertainty. So as a company, we had to respond by not only ensuring that we can supply our products to our customers, but ensuring that we introduce a level of stability as well as sustainability into the way that we transact. So I will go specifically into procurement and some of the specific interventions that were done in order to reach the levels that we are at now. So firstly, the first thing we had to do was ensure that from a procurement perspective, all of our initiatives were aligned to the business strategy, because that enables you to get the support that you need when we ensure that whatever we do within the departmental perspective aligns to the company vision or the business vision. So back in 2020, where demand was unpredictable, the first thing that we had to ensure is we keep close to our suppliers. We applied a model called the Mike Perry and Associates model in order to link better with our suppliers, such that whatever we do internally is aligned to what our suppliers are doing. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to touch on specific lessons learned through one of the examples that we face. So we have a supplier in Italy that supplies rubber soles. Rubber soles go into the base of our shoe. So it's basically stuck onto a safety shoe. It's for a specific high heat environment. And this rubber sole is sourced from Italy. Now, back then in 2020, where we're in the thick of COVID, we experienced increasing demand. The lead time was extended from our suppliers. And then what that created was unreliability. And therefore, within our department, we're working off system trying to predict demand, which was proving to be a challenge because the supply of these rubber soles was very erratic. So through close partnership with the supplier, we reviewed, call it the logistics leg in Italy. So our supplier is in close proximity to the Ancona port. In order to reduce the lead time, we then put in interventions where we would hold the stock to La Spezia. La Spezia is a busier port, and therefore there's better coverage. And it's also a 25-day lead time to Durban as opposed to 45 days from Ancona port. In order also to ensure that whatever interventions that we put in place was sustainable, we went back, reviewed all our input parameters into our system such that whatever messages or call it purchase orders that we place were as accurate as possible. Some of the preventative actions that we've put in place is on a quarterly basis, we review all of our input parameters onto our JDE system. And as Warren pointed out earlier, you cannot get accurate demand. And the more time you spend trying to figure out the quantities, you start to get diminishing returns. So what we did is on a quarterly basis, through close links with the supplier, we review the lead times, minimum order quantities, pack size, order multiples, just to ensure that the data that we get off our system is as accurate as possible. Once again, this was some of the interventions that we had to put back then. And through our supplier engagements, we focused on 3 specific interventions. We focused on supplier visits. We focused on ways of working, not only at BBF, but to better understand how our suppliers work within their facilities. And then also what that created was alignment of expectations. So if I look at our top 20 suppliers, which supply 80% of our volumes, we went and we visited their facilities. We would sit with our suppliers, understand their systems, understand how they work. We gave them full visibility of our forecasts. We understand how they manage their inventory, and then we would improve the links that we have, such that whenever we transact, whenever we interact with our suppliers, it is as seamless as possible. From a systems perspective, once again, this was one of the areas which really helped improve procurement as a whole. So on a quarterly basis, we review all the input parameters onto our ERP system. This is done not only to ensure the accuracy of the messages that we get out of our system, but also it helps build trust within the system. Now, as you can imagine, you're in the thick of COVID, where demand is varying at levels that are unprecedented. So what tends to happen, and it's more of a discipline issue, is instead of improving the accuracy of what you get out of the system, buyers tend to work off system. So what we do in order to ensure that we are as close to accurate as possible is we make sure that the input parameters on our system, we're talking about your order multiple, your pack size, your lead times, your triple S cover factor, order multiples, etc., are as accurate as possible. And we do this by ensuring that we have close links with our suppliers, such that whatever information we get, it's reflected onto our ERP system. Now, when we look at our inventory levels, I'm going to take you through from March 2020 to October 2024, stock rotation and the movement of stock within our business. So if you look at the graph on your left, we had our stock rotation has improved drastically from 2020, and it's in percentages. So if you look at stock that moves within a 6-month period, 40% of all the raw materials that we buy rotate within a 6-month period, in less than 6 months. And we've seen an improvement in our slow and aged stock, where we've seen a reduction of close to, call it on average, 80% between 6 to 12 months, 12 to 24 months, and 24 months to 36 months, where we've put in initiatives and a great amount of effort into reducing our slow and moving stock, such that we have the right mix of stock within our warehouse. And some of the interventions that we've put in place there, which has yielded great results for us, is the rationalization and standardization of raw materials. So I look after 4 sites from a raw material perspective. We've got a site in Joburg, 2 sites in Pinetown, and another site in PE, where we've looked at all the common raw materials, such that you reduce your inventory levels and you only stock that which you will convert. We also repurposing of aged and slow moving dead stock. And one of the important interventions was improving the alignment between other departments within the value chain, so namely sales and marketing. What that does is it improves our ability to plan better product run-ins, product run-outs, which ensure that we do not have material that is aging. And also, once again, time as master data changes. So if we know that we are running out of product, immediately on our system, you mark it use up such that you don't get triggers to procure raw materials. And those are some of the interventions that we put in place to ensure that we improve our stock rotation. Now, the benefit of us having, call it 80% of our materials getting converted within less than 6 months is we are able to supply X stock. So all our make to stock finished goods items, we track and monitor our levels very closely. So as you can see there, those are some of our key styles where we've got adequate stock levels in terms of safety stock. Here we're able to supply X stock when we get customer demand. Now, what I'm going to try to do now is basically summarize some of our lessons learned. And in no order of importance, I think system maintenance, so that's namely master data updates, should be done timelessly and periodically. If I look at how we do it at BBF, every 3 months, we review all of our input parameters on our system. So as you can imagine, an ERP system is highly dependent on the maintenance that you do on the system. If your system has inaccurate data, I am certain that the procurement signals that you get will be inaccurate. We have a strong emphasis on P2P rules and governance, and also alignment with other stakeholders in the value chain has enabled us to improve our customer service drastically. And what we try to do, and this is specifically within the procurement department, is ensure that our resources are allocated accordingly, and also we rotate buyers. So we don't have specific specialists, for instance, a packaging specialist or a chemical specialist. What we do, we rotate buyers every 6 months to 1 year, which exposes our buyers to other categories within our procurement. So that has really enabled us to build dynamic capabilities, as well as the implementation of processes to ensure traceability and and repeatability. Yeah, and if I look at some of the next challenges that we are facing, it's navigating port delays, as well as the macroeconomic challenges without impacting customer service. And also sustaining a culture of continuous improvement, because within the procurement space, there's a lot of uncertainty. And as we pointed out earlier, demand fluctuates all the time. We're bringing in new styles. So what we try to do is we try to continuously improve, and we accept feedback, especially from other stakeholders within the value chain. And very importantly, when it comes to discipline and system maintenance, in fact, we are enforcing discipline and system maintenance. So not only within procurement, but throughout the value chain. So if you look at, for instance, within our facilities, within a factory, when you issue raw materials, you have to do it within the system such that we get a trigger to procure. So that is very important. So we enforce discipline, not only within call it procurement, but throughout our value chain. So within our factories, within our goods receiving, within our goods dispatch, at our DC, such that the flow of information is as accurate as possible.
If I could just reiterate there before we get on to questions, what Linda raised there is key. When I was implementing the info system at our Envirotech division, one of the rules that we made is if it happens in life, it happens in the system. As live as possible. So when we issue something and it crosses a gate or a threshold of a factory, there's either an issue or a receipt, and it has to be live. So I'm not sure if there are questions now. I had been asked to present on KPIs. I've got a hidden slide that I'm happy to raise if someone would like to see at a group level, but I don't want to confuse things. Maybe now would be a good time to take some questions.
We don't have any questions at the moment. There's comments, but no actual questions that I can see. But you're welcome to share your slide, and then we can open up for questions. Thanks.
So what I've done, and I've just suddenly panicked. Yes, no, okay. I had to take the data out of here. So maybe just to explain, I mean, the numbers there, I'm sorry, just from a confidentiality or governance perspective. But what you're looking at here is we use Click as a dashboarding system or as a BI tool, and we integrate with all of the systems. This is a group-wide view. In other words, all 4 operating companies summarized. It's quite a complex. It's complex to understand how we do it because some of them are additions and some of them are averages. But effectively, the key measures that we're looking at are, for example, days inventory outstanding is one of the key metrics. And it's funny, we were trying to get it below a target level of, let's just say, a number of 400. Please, it's not going to be a logical. Please don't think that is 400 days of inventory outstanding. Okay, you've got to understand the relative measure as a sum of the group. And what happened was, because we launched it in January, we immediately made it visible. And you can see by February, we'd already reduced. And part of it was because there was a lot of redundant stock reduction across the divisions. Some divisions did better than others. The beauty is having 4 companies, when one division shoots the lights out in January, another one might shoot the lights out in February. But what counts is that we are reducing the days inventory outstanding significantly. The total inventory reduction, you can see clearly in January, there was a big peak in reduction. This is the amount by which we reduced inventory, and so we've continued to do that. And you'll see that in the stock reduction number, which is a total here on the bottom right. You can see it impacting that. This in particular, just to play, yeah, I've hidden what it is. I'm really sorry, just from a governance perspective. But this is a particular raw material that we were sitting with that we needed to get rid of. We use it, but it was way too high. And that is 0 at the bottom right there. We have reduced it from about 13 to 0. That's how much work and focus has gone into it by making it visible. That's in one of the divisions. then packaging is a massive cost in one of the other divisions. And so the packaging cost reduction is genuine. We have not yet reduced by 1% the packaging cost. And the reason for that is we were holding too much packaging in stock. And so by reducing the pack sizes, reducing the stock that we held, it still hasn't yet flowed through our system. This in particular is in the medical segment. And in the medical game, you have got to have 100% stock, finished good stock availability. You have no make to order. It is full, you sell from stock. So we have yet to see the benefit, and it will come through in October. We've yet to see the benefit of that packaging cost reduction. The other thing is just your inventory to sales conversion ratio is my particular one, and I want to keep it below a certain or above the conversion rate to be above. And this shows that even though we've reduced inventory to budget, we haven't yet reduced enough to hit that inventory to sales conversion. And so we monitor. So if you want to know what the dashboard is that the board, and I'm talking at the Beier Group board level, uses, this is one of a number of dashboards that we look at to make sure that we're running kind of as lean as we can. And I guess I hope that gives you maybe some kind of understanding what we're looking at a group level. Okay. I see some questions have come through.
Yes. So
Please.
Shanti agrees with Lindo. Can you hear me okay? Sorry. Garbage in, garbage out data accuracy is key. Welcome, Mr. Ahmed, who's from the Comoros, which is very exciting. And then Atty has a question. How accurate would you say your master data is? And do you have data stewards maintaining it?
Okay, let Linda answer this one first. How do you think your data accuracy is sitting at the moment?
Yeah, so as I said earlier, it is continuous improvement. I don't think you can say you are at a perfect level. I mean, we try by all means to maintain, and we've put in rules and specific interventions to ensure that our system is as clean as possible. So maybe let me share some of those interventions. So we work very closely with the systems team. So the systems team is the team that looks after the ERP system. So they basically look after the ERP system, and we do the input and extract the value out of the system, but they call it the gatekeepers of the system. So we work very closely with them. They monitor the system on a daily basis. We have an entire team that looks after the ERP system. They monitor the system. And where there are abnormalities, they raise those abnormalities. We obviously look at them. But what I can say is, if I look at where we come from, so call it 2020, and where we are now, we have done we have put in a lot of effort and specific focus into improving our system, and we are now reaping the rewards. However, you cannot put a line in the sand and say our system is perfect now. No, our system, I'd say, call it 70 to 80%, but we still got a lot of room to improve, a lot of room to grow. So that's where we are now.
Yeah, I'd agree. And looking across, looking from, I guess, a bit of a disconnected helicopter view, is that Linda and I will meet twice a year, and there's a reason for that, prior to a prep meeting that we sit through. And Linda presents to me quite a detailed, let's just call it a spreadsheet for want of a better word, that shows us where we are, for example, on lead times, planned stock levels, safety stock levels, and then what the system suggests is a suggested safety stock level. And he goes through on an 80-20 Pareto style, making sure that he corrects wherever needed, but not forgetting that you can't blindly listen to a system, because there can be peaks and troughs that drive the data up or down in the wrong way. And so I think 80% is probably a little bit unfair on yourself. But yeah, certainly we're not above the 90% mark in terms of accuracy. Curious about sustaining. Yeah, sorry.
No problem. Sorry. Did you finish? I was interrupting. I apologize.
No, finished.
Okay. Which inventory management system do you use?
Oh, well, Linda, you answered from a
so we use JDE. So we do not have, because normally what you'd find is there's normally two systems. You've got an inventory, specific inventory management system, and then you've got all your other business transactions on a separate system. We use JDE end to end to manage our inventory, to manage our factories. We do have Click, which is a bolt-on, which drives the dashboards. We've got other dashboard inventory management system. It also resides within JDE.
Great.
Rachel,
Thanks.
does that
Walter, do you mind? Sorry, I think Walter's unmuted, so I'm just asking him if he could mute, or Connor, if you could mute, please. Did that answer your question?
Yes, I'm answered. Thank
Sharon,
you.
okay, awesome. Sharon has a question. Tell us more about your experience and learnings with DDMRP and DBM1 Beat. That sounds quite cool.
So, what that refers to, and thanks, Sharon. I think.
Hello. Hello.
Hi, Walter.
Oh.
How are you?
Hi, Walter.
Currently, I'm going to work, man. I'm so privileged, guys, to be the part of this meeting today. I see that you guys, you are just sharing so good benefits for economic growth. Can I just ask only one question, guys, man? Because as we know exactly, everywhere in the market, there must be a customer demand drive. There is other means for me, myself, as a Walter alone, to be an intermediary for your own company. You guys are just provide me with the goods as an intermediary, but I'm the service provider from certain other institution.
So Walter, look, certainly you can speak to SAPICS. We here on behalf of SAPICS, they invited us, and I'm sure you're more than welcome to speak to one of the people there at SAPICS. From our business model side, look, just to put it out there, and I'm quite happy to talk about it. What we as BBF do is we use a network of distributors. We very seldom go direct to end users. Our business model is one of manufacturing. So what we believe we are good at is converting raw materials to finished goods. We also design the finished goods in line with customer expectations. So we make sure we've got a range of products that meet customers' needs. So there's a shoe at the entry level and a shoe at the high level. What we don't do is our systems are not geared up to, for example, sell at a retail or a wholesale level. So what we do is we supply distributors, and we have several of them, and they then are market facing. They make sure that they get, call it the last mile, they get our shoes onto feet. And Walter, I'm sure there's somewhere that anybody could fit in there, and I'll leave it up to you, but I'm afraid I can't answer that directly today. But thank you.
You answer accordingly. You answered accordingly, because what you already now respond in there, you respond the way I was already going to ask you about the issue of customizing the product, and then mitigation of the blue whip effect, because you said your enterprise system is reliable, but it's monitored. But thank you guys, because I'm going to the work now, for that time to be sharing.
Walter, thank you, and thank you for
Walter.
your appreciate it.
Bye.
Cheers.
We still have 3 more questions. So there's Sharon's question. Would you like me to repeat it, or did you get it?
Could we come back to that one last? Because I've got questions on that one. So if you don't mind, could we do that one last?
Sure. And then I'm curious about sustaining continuous improvement on your list of next challenges. What are your interventions here, with a particular focus on users rather than the tech?
Sure.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So what we try to do is we try to capacitate our buyers with enough knowledge and experience in order for them to be able to transact and carry out the day-to-day requirements, the procurement requirements. So if I look outside of the system, we do supplier visits. So we don't view procurement as just us placing an order on a supply and a delivery happening. We manage a relationship very closely. And maybe let me go back and give live examples from COVID, or lessons learned from COVID. If we had not had the tight and close links with our suppliers, we probably wouldn't have been able to respond as quickly as we did from a raw material supply perspective. So we visit our suppliers with the buyer. So the buyer who's responsible for that category, and myself, we visit the supplier. If it means we travel, just so we understand how they manage their raw material, how they manage their factories, and how they manage, call it, their dispatch. So We go through the entire process, look at the goods dispatch process. How do they issue? Do they issue with a COC? We capacitate some of our suppliers, and I think Warren touched on it very well earlier, where we have partners that we are developing from a localization perspective, where we assist them, we capacitate our suppliers. And the buyer is not necessarily responsible for rolling that out, but they're accountable for ensuring that it happens. The supplier is able to supply us good quality, conforming product, right first time. And those are some of the initiatives. Obviously, I won't go into the very specific details, but at a high level, we capacitate and equip all of our buyers with the necessary experience that they need, not only to transact within the system, but also manage the relationship. Because it's often that relationship that counts the most. Because as you would know, there's many challenges within supply chain, and often you just need to make a phone call and get that support. So without managing the relationship closely, the system is one element. There, we very disciplined, we enforce discipline, in fact. However, further to that, there's the relationship management element. I hope that answers your question.
Could
Thanks,
I extend?
Lindo.
Could I extend to Alan's
Jump in.
question? Alan asked a similar thing about step change. Is that, Alan, in line with that, it's going to be a people-related issue. What we've realized is that systems are pretty much getting bedded down. I can tell you, looking at those KPIs in the background, though, I know that those numbers are relatively right, but they're absolutely not right. In other words, the absolute number, for example, of that inventory to sales conversion in days, I know that there's a consistent method of measuring it. What I would like to see from a group perspective, and it goes beyond just even BBF, is that within the group, we start to now fine-tune the KPIs so that they really do move the needle. And that's a people issue. It's about a knowledge issue. And to extend to what Lindo said, if just to make it even more explicit, is that what we do is we're technically fairly competent in manufacturing products. We've got to be technically solid at what we buy, when we buy, how we buy, in the principles. You mentioned DDMLP. I'm with you on that one. I like DDMLP as a principle. We run 9 sets of demand forecasting based on different, and it's cyclical, etc. But for me in particular, I love theory of constraints, and my ultimate would be to get almost a center of excellence, and we're in the process of doing that, a center of purchasing or supply chain excellence, so that we can now start to get that next step up. And that's going to rely on people in the same way as the using KPIs, not just to show data, but to actually use it in everyday life for the people in the plants. That for me is the next big issue. It's a people related issue.
Great. There's a nice comment from Solomon. Thank you, Solomon, for that. And then the 2 questions from Sharon, if you want to address those.
Okay. So in short, and I'm acutely aware of the time, demand-driven MRP, we are, let me go back to the slide and maybe make it slightly more visual for you. So when I spoke about the different systems, and we're now looking at the different companies, my ideal would be Beier Envirotech, for example, buys raw materials and manufactures sub-assemblies or sub-components that get supplied to BBF, to Drawtex, and to Newcoat. And my ultimate end goal is that when Newcoat has customer demand forecast, that we know that cyclically, when the rainy seasons come, there's demand for PVC because the rains come, you've got to cover your food. So when we know that there's demand that's coming at Newcoat, that signal goes all the way back to Envirotech, which is one of the raw material suppliers, who then have their vertical or their incoming goods. In fact, all of them are in that instance imported because there are no local manufacturers of it. So my ideal would be that Envirotech have dynamic buffer management of that raw material, coupled with demand forecasting from Newcoat. And I know I'm not talking scientifically here, but I'm adamant that we can use the 2 systems together. I believe we can use the 2 systems to decouple or de-risk the constraints, which in Envirotech's case is incoming goods, based on demand that's driven from a Newcoat system. And I think I might have way oversimplified it. And I hope I don't do anyone any disservice, but I'm adamant that through our systems, we can drive our procurement based on demand throughout our verticals. I don't know, that is what my vision is. You then ask, I mean, I don't think I need to talk through the differences between the two systems, but to give you an idea, Newcoat is running Acumatica, and we're busy now rolling out Acumatica in Beier Healthcare. And the complexity is that we have a choice to make because we're in the blueprinting phase. We can either use a process design, which is what Newcoat used, or obviously batch-driven discrete manufacturing, which makes sense from a Drawtex perspective. What throws a challenge in there, and therefore DDMRP at Drawtex, as opposed to we can't use DDMRP, it would have to be bespoke at Newcoat, is that the implementation at BDH, then we're going to go off standard from a systems perspective. I didn't realize how difficult it is to try to explain in the 2 minutes that I had left. But the bottom line is that I think we're going to have to do a blend, and we're going through the blueprinting process in Drawtex at the moment, which is bringing up, we're facing exactly these challenges. Do we use a DDMRP, which would require discrete, or use dynamic buffer management, which we could do separately and use the same Acumatica setup and configuration as Newcoat, and therefore have a single system across both? I hope that in a nutshell has answered the question. I'm happy to engage after the time is done. And I'm happy to take feedback. If anyone has a view on that, I'm happy to take conflicting views as well, or contrarian views.
Thank you,
Sure.
Warren,
I mean,
for explaining. I'm just thinking, Claire and Warren, that this is perhaps a good subject or topic for next year's conference. We can delve into the hypothesis and further discussion. Thank you,
Sure.
Warren.
With pleasure. Super.
Thanks very much. Alan, did you want to add anything else? We also have another question. I'm interested in supplier performance mechanisms. What have you found has worked for your group? And this is in terms of quality and delivery. Obviously, if anyone wants to jump off because it's 4 o'clock, you're welcome to, but I think maybe we can take the time to answer that one question if you don't mind.
Certainly. So let me explain from let's call it a corporate perspective, and we'd hate to be called a corporate. From a corporate view, we need to maintain supplier history, and from an ISO 9001 ISO, we also have to comply with ISO 13485, which is the medical device and the medical device directives. So from that perspective, we have to rate our suppliers ABC suppliers. We have to keep history. We look at things like on-time performance, pricing, etc. So from a corporate side, there's your stock answer. Yes, of course, it's an important thing to do. Yeah. And we would typically end it there. I think it's been for me, and I've helped write a number of these systems, is that it is one of the biggest, most challenging areas. We, in a lot of cases, and please, I'm not talking on Linda's behalf here, but in a lot of cases, don't have alternatives locally. I can think of some really key suppliers where if we're not partners, we're dead, because they sole suppliers. So it's one thing to say, well, you're a C supplier or D supplier, and we're going to penalize you. It's another thing, we just can't walk away. So the reality is, I don't have, from a corporate side, a single answer, other than, and what I like about what Lindo's done in particular, is he's come from a world-class manufacturing background. He's moved into a supply chain position, and he's focused understanding what happens, at the coalface in production, for example. He understands what happens to a machine when you don't have supply. So when you're negotiating with the supplier, it's never just purely arm's length. So Linda, I'll then let you give your perspective on how you then monitor it through your JDE system, etc.
Yeah, so I think Warren, you've summed it up very well. So there's a typical corporate KPIs, and we have all of it because from an auditing perspective, it's something that you must have. So you rate your suppliers, you look at their history of performance, etc. So all of that is there. However, what I've come to learn over the couple of years that I've been in procurement is when you rate your suppliers A, B, C, D, E, you either rate them in terms of volume, quantity supplied, or you rate them in terms of value, like who supplies in terms of value, 80-20 principle, etc. So we do that as well. However, to Warren's point, all of our suppliers from a strategic importance are all important. I do not have a supplier where I see them as a Mickey Mouse suppliers. All of my suppliers are equally important, simply because if you look at a safety issue, a lace is just important as the leather. It's just important as the PU that are sourced from Singapore. It's just as important as the insole that we source around the corner. So from a supplier management perspective, all of them are equally important. And from a rating and performance perspective, I apply the exact same principles. So irrespective of whether you supply 10,000 or 100 million, for instance, you are held accountable according to the same KPIs and standards from a performance perspective. I hope that makes sense.
No, that's great. Thank you, Linda. Thank you. It does.
Well, thank you, everybody. I think we have some nice thank yous here. So I hope you can see that. And I'd like to just thank you formally again, Warren and Lindo. Very interesting, even for a non-supply chain person. And I think that people can reach out to you. Hopefully your email addresses or something, or whatever, however you would like to be contacted through LinkedIn, maybe it's on a last slide here, if that's something that you're happy to do. And then maybe we'll see the two of them in Cape Town at the annual conference.
What date is that?
8th to the 11th of June, 2025.
Oh, perfect. We can plan.
Yeah.
And I must say, I see some familiar names. To see Ryan online, and Sam, I think you actually work for our gumboot plant up in Johannesburg. So good to see everyone.
Thanks, John.
Okay, and Claire, absolutely. Contact us through LinkedIn or email, and you'll see either of them are easy to find in the public domain. Thank you all, and we appreciate the opportunity. Look forward to hearing from people. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you all SAPICS people for your engagement. We look forward to chatting to you all again in early 2025, and everybody be well and be safe.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well done. Well done, everyone.